Hey everybody, Jerry Brown here, and on this latest edition of Groove Don't Lie, got a homeboy, Stephen Wolf, aka Wolf, drummer programmer for Alicia Keys, Beyonce, Britney Spears, Pink, Aretha Franklin, Tribal Tech, and our homeboy from Philadelphia. Rest in peace, Grover Washington. So we got a lot to get to. So let's get to it. Wolf, Stephen Wolf, on the Groove Don't Lie podcast. Hey, everybody.
Yeah.
I'm here with one of the most esteemed musicians. And for me, we come from the same hometown. And if you didn't know, we have a person, a commonality. And this person is Miss Elaine Watts. And she was kind of like our original groove mama. So, ladies and gentlemen, the Wolf is here.
Yes, absolutely.
Wolf is here. Brother, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Jerry. I'm really honored to do this. Thank you. Thank you. Such an honor to talk to you.
Oh, man, it's an honor to talk with you, for you to be here, man. So let's talk a little bit about Philly.
Okay.
What were some of the, can you remember any moments either with Elaine Watts or after Elaine Watts where you found this path or the path found you and you're just going along for the ride?
Yeah. I mean, I started with, how old were you when you studied with Mrs. Watts? I still call her Mrs. Watts to this day. It's hard for me to call her.
So do I.
So how old were you when you started with her?
I started with her when I was like about 7 years old.
Me too. We were children.
We were children,
Yeah.
yes.
So it's funny, when my mom passed away, I had to go through boxes. My father was like, "I'm throwing everything out if you and your brothers don't take it." So I had boxes of my drum lesson books from the 70s when I was a kid that Mrs. Watts took me through. All the books we've all gone through.
Right.
And she had her handwritten notes with the dates. And it's funny, I have no recollection of learning to read music, but I know she taught me to read music. And brushes and timpani and all these other things that I guess I was kind of a little dissociative. I was a depressed little kid, so I kind of tuned a lot of life out. But when it came to music, I was very present. And so I soaked everything up. But I remember her. She was such a character. And
did.
A little bit of an authoritarian, but in a loving way.
A very motherly way.
Yes. And by the time she was like my grandmother's age. So to me, she was like my grandmother / drum teacher. And yeah, very maternal, to your point. And I remember one thing that sticks out is she used to beam when she would talk about you. And anytime you were going to be on TV, she was like, "Jerry's going to be playing with Lionel Richie on the Grammys," or whatever it was. And I had multiple drum heroes, including you at the time, but I didn't grow up with any connection to the music industry. Like, I have friends that grew up, their fathers were Grammy-winning producers and things like that. So for them, it didn't seem like such an impossible dream. But for me, it just didn't seem realistic. But then when my teacher had a star pupil that was having all this wild success in different genres of music, you became like a North Star for me that it's like, maybe I'm getting a little choked up talking about it, but that like maybe there's a chance that I can do this one day for real. So I remember that, and that kind of really helped steer me. Um, and just
Yeah.
had another Philly guy, Tommy Campbell. When I was at Berkeley, he was another hometown hero that kind of took me under his wing and became my mentor. I dropped out of Berkeley, but while I was there, he was my mentor, and he did a lot for me. And so both of you guys,
Oh, man.
like as far as like the Philly connection, were two North Stars for me. And but in general,
Yes.
I don't know. Like you played with Stanley Clarke a lot growing up, correct? I think you got
Yeah, that which
yeah,
was all part of the, you know, of what doesn't really exist now, but that when in school systems that they had,
yeah,
these all city
yeah,
programs, and not only the music, but just you're just meeting different people, man, from different walks of life,
yeah,
and the commonality is this universal language of music.
yeah. So I remember I had friends I played with, and most of them have gone on to successful careers in music, either as artists, sidemen, or record executives. And I was kind of going in two different directions. I had my like fusion drummer path, and I played with people we were mostly playing jazz and fusion. And then I was playing in cover bands and eventually original bands. We were playing like funk and pop and rock, like based off of the stuff we heard on the radio. So I was, without knowing it, I was getting an education just through the experience of playing these types of music, and everything got a little more real when we started getting recognized and winning. Like we'd go all over the city and play battles of the bands at different high schools or play different senior proms, and things started to seem more real. And and then through to Berkeley, and that's when I got two things happened. I got diagnosed with fibromyalgia, which I don't think I've ever referred to it by name. I've talked about in interviews about like hurting my hands when I was younger, but it's a condition called fibromyalgia, which I was 20 and I woke up one day and I could barely hold a pencil, let alone pick up drumsticks. And my career was just starting to take off, but I was pushing myself way too hard, like a lot of us were, we were coming up. And this was the mid 80s where music was getting louder and louder and louder, but they weren't necessarily miking up the drums on these gigs. And I was hitting way too hard, cracking cymbals, cracking my snare drum hoops, just going through sticks and not knowing that I didn't have to hit that hard all the time. And there were no backline kits at Berkeley, so I was carrying my kit around everywhere. And eventually, I would go to bed after I would play in ensembles at school and then gig at clubs in Boston at night. And it'd be like 4 or 5 in the morning. I'm going to sleep and my hands feel like mush, but I'd wake up the next day good to go. And then one day I woke up and my body just didn't recover. And this doctor said, he gave me the diagnosis, which is fibromyalgia is an idiopathic diagnosis, meaning they know it's a real condition, but they don't know how you get it and they don't have a cure for it. So his advice was give up drums because it's going to be way too painful to have a career as a drummer with this condition, and I couldn't accept that. So I made a lot of other changes. I got into holistic medicine, radically changed my diet, started a daily routine of yoga and qigong and other stretches that I do to this day. And he had me think about the kit in a more ergonomic way, and I simplified my playing, which was ended up being a blessing in disguise because that paved the way for my career in the session world. Because if I'm overplaying on sessions, I'm not going to keep working. So all this happened, and at the same time, I don't know, a few months after I was like rehabbing my hands and getting back into playing, I got the gig with a guy named Hiram Bullock, who at the time was signed to Atlantic. That was when session musicians would still get major label deals. And and I dropped out of Berkeley, brought me to New York, and that's when my career just, within 6 months, I went from being told you're never going to play drums again to like all of a
Hey
sudden
man,
I'm
can you
playing with
play on my
major
gig,
label
man? Can you
artists.
do my session, man?
Yeah,
Incredible,
yeah,
incredible.
yeah. And yeah, and yeah, and this is pre-internet, so I was just figuring it out as I went along, and I was also an early adopter of electronics. So that was another thing I was just kind of figuring it out as I went along. But that would also play a huge part in what I do now because most of what I do is drum programming these days, or at least 50% is drum programming.
So
Um,
I got to stop for a minute
yeah.
because what you've said, there are people that can't imagine that you were going through that.
Mm,
And the fact that
yeah.
you made a choice, I'll say it like this, man. You had to figure this shit out
Yeah.
because
Exactly. Yeah.
you had come too far. You can't just
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah. Yeah. You know. Y-
okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, no,
Yeah. Yeah. You know, the amount of hours we put in honing our natural abilities to get to that point to have a career, it's hard.
it's
That's your whole childhood.
it's
Yeah.
you're learning that sacrifice, man. It's like, yeah, I know my friends, da da da. No, but
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
calling me. This is calling me.
It's a it's a calling, and it was religion really didn't play a part in my life as a kid. So this was my spiritual connection to life
Oh, it's just
was through music.
hey, the universal language.
Yeah. Yeah.
Universal
Yeah,
language is calling you.
absolutely.
Say, oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. 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 So yeah, and I've listened to a bunch of episodes of your podcast, and you have a theme of longevity, and all these things really were blessings in disguise because I had to learn to, I wouldn't say reinvent myself, but adapt. And you've seen the changes music has gone through in the last 20, 30 years. Um, so I'm constantly adapting, and I've been blessed to still have a career doing what I love. But I mean, the music, if you can't see, I'm in my home studio now, and I have a drum set behind me, which I don't even record here because it's a small room. I go to bigger studios to record live, but this is just to practice on. But in front of me is a computer and an interface and some monitors. And this is technology. I make records remotely here, from independent stuff to major label hits. People just send me shit online, and I do my part and I send it out. And none of this
Yeah,
technology
yeah.
existed
That but
when I
yeah,
was becoming a
that
drummer.
hadn't happened yet.
And it's, it's, yeah, so it's just, I've been really blessed, and I think, like, there's that saying, the obstacle is the way. So all these things that I perceived as obstacles originally ended up preparing me to be able to adapt and, like, remap everything and just go with the flow of life, or God, the universe, life, whatever you want to call it.
Amen.
Yeah.
Well, I know
Yeah.
from what you just said, the Stoics, man.
Yeah. 100%. It's a stoic saying. Yeah.
The Stoic,
Yeah.
it's a Stoic thing,
Yeah.
man.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, yeah, those they went through this stuff,
Yes, absolutely. So,
you know. So it's incredible, man.
yeah, and I look at you, and you're still working at the highest levels of music, and you started it was such a different world when you started, and you've
Well, different world, but at the
yeah,
same time, s- the things that you mentioned of the situations that you
yeah,
were, you're playing fusion,
yeah,
you're playing dances.
yeah,
Man, hey, you wearing the
yeah,
hat.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the cats now, I don't know if they get to wear those many hats.
Probably not, and it's there's pros and cons to I see kids today, like, when we were coming up, you had to really work to get the information to build up your chops, and chops were not as ubiquitous as they are now.
Mm,
You go on social media, you see 10-year-olds with blazing chops, but it's very homogenous because they're all learning it from the same source. They're not figuring it out on their own the same way. And I think that's what makes everybody up until the recent generations, like, their playing is a little more special to my ears, be because they bring more of their own life experience to what they're playing.
Life experience and whom they've listened to,
Yeah.
and that comes through, whereas, as you're saying, these little 10-year-olds, they got
Yeah.
as many chops
Yeah. Yeah.
as the 20-year-old,
Yeah.
and it's like, well, who would they listen to?
Yeah.
They listen to somebody with,
Yeah.
just chops,
Yeah. But even if they're listening
you know?
to people that are more than just chops, it's not like I'll give you an example, like, when I was a kid, well, this is a chops drummer, but Billy Cobham. So,
Mm,
I would get some vinyl, and when I was maybe 13, my ears weren't developed where I could hear it in real time and figure out what was going on, so I put my finger on the turntable, slow it down enough, but the technology didn't exist where we could make it slower but keep the pitch the same. So the pitch got so low that you couldn't really differentiate between a bass drum and a tom tom and a snare drum. It just was all these low notes. So I could hear the rhythms, but I had to make my best attempt to recreate it. And I would usually get it wrong, but that was the magic because then you come up with your own variation on that shit and then you build from there. Whereas now a kid can listen to, let's say, like Nate Smith, who's like one of
yeah,
today's
yeah,
like star, um, and they can get a Skype lesson with him where he can say, "This is how I play it," or they can find any number of other drum teachers breaking it down. This is how to play this note for note with multiple camera angles, so they can see each limb. And so they're lucky that it's so easy the access to this information, but they're because they're not working for it, they're not adding their own
that
thing to
makes
it,
sense.
if that makes sense. So yeah, yeah, yeah. So so I envy the younger generation, but I also kind of have a little I feel sorry for them at the same way because they're missing some of that magic
I I
to my
agree.
ears.
So,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
drop out of Berkeley, so I'm
Yeah.
gonna ask, from that time of when you dropped out of Berkeley, how did that connection with Grover Washington, how did that manifest?
Okay, so yeah. So Grover, um, do you know Pablo Batista, master percussionist, still lives in Philly. Um, when I dropped out of Berkeley, I didn't have an apartment in New York yet. So this is 1989. I dropped out, and Hiram was putting me up in hotels in New York, or I would sometimes crash at his loft. And in the meantime, I was just taking the train back and forth to
I don't
Philly
know him, but I
and
know
crashing
that
at my
name.
parents' place. And there was a drummer named Andy Kravitz. I don't know if do you know Andy? He's almost more of a producer and a mix engineer these days, but he dropped out of school when we were kids, and he was working in the Philly scene, like playing in clubs. And there was an early hip hop label in Philly that he became the house drummer. So he was working on all these early like hip hop hits, and he was like the top of the heap of the local Philly drummers at that time. And he
Yeah,
called me and said, "Hey, I heard you're back in town. Do you want to sub with
right.
this band?" And it was a band called Steve Green and the Elevators. And I don't know if if you know those guys. Steve was originally in this band Breakwater. Yeah, and the band at the time, it was kind of a revolving door of musicians, but it was
Yeah,
all really great musicians. So
monster.
Steve was playing bass. Ted Baker, who would eventually go to New York and play with Steely Dan for years, was playing keyboards. Jeff Lee Johnson, who was just such a monster talent, was playing guitar. Pablo was playing percussion, and there were some other people, but that was the core of like the rhythm section. And Pablo and I really hit it off. And Grover, I think Grover's brother was playing drums with him for a while. And that he left the gig. I don't know the details of how that happened. And
Oh,
Pablo called me and said, "Grover's looking for a new drummer. I recommended you. Do you want to come and audition?" And I was already committed to a tour with a fusion band called Tribal Tech. That was Scott Henderson, Gary, based in LA. and I was just filling in for their drummer, Kirk Covington, at the time, and yeah, yes, and, and even though Grover would have been much more my cup of tea than Tribal Tech, I knew it would be unprofessional to just, like, cancel in the middle of a tour, so I thanked Pablo. Fortunately, the drummer that Grover got only did, like, a short run of gigs and wasn't a good fit, and I got a call maybe a year later or less from Grover's management and and they said, "You don't even have to audition. Pablo's word carries enough weight." And at that point, I had some recording credits. So it was basically like,
Yeah,
Grover's
yes.
got some stuff coming up. The gig's yours if you want to do it. Really, what it was like, the gig's yours, but if you fuck up, you're going to get fired. So the gig is yours if you step up. So fortunately, I stepped up. And yeah, I took Amtrak to Philly. Do you know Bill Jolly, who was Grover's? So Bill was there with his piano scarf in his house, and it was in Bill's basement, and that's the first time I met Grover, and it was surreal. The band just worked over. They sent me a board tape, and I kind of made some of my own like cheat sheet charts just to get like his medleys together, and I knew the songs, but I didn't know how they would start and end them live. So and then we ran the set once before Grover got there, and then we were playing, and then while we're playing, I see Grover come down the stairs and pull his horns out, and he just starts playing, and it was like, "Holy shit, that's that voice that I've heard for years," and or, his voice, so to speak, his sax voice, and it was wild. And that I wish I could have played more with him, but it was at a time where I was the only guy in the band who wasn't living in Philly, and Grover at that point was only working a few months a year. And that wasn't enough for me to live off of in New York. So if he's off for the rest of the year, I would get other gigs. And then I started getting some bigger pop gigs where they were putting me on retainer. And I had to bow out. And I was friends with Richie Morales, who had quit Spyro Gyra. So I connected them. And then after that, Richie and I would kind of trade the gig back and forth until Grover passed. But that all started with Pablo. Um,
Wow.
And just from playing, and you've talked about this on your podcast before, but you never know, like, take every gig.
There's
Uh,
no throwaway gigs.
Yeah, exactly. And I didn't think about it politically in those terms, like, you never know who's gonna be at the gig, who can advance your career. For me, it was just like going back to, like, it's a spiritual thing where I didn't know how not to just be completely immersed in the music, no matter if I'm playing a hole in the wall bar or a stadium. It's like, if I'm playing
One and the
music.
same. One and the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was one of many gigs where you wouldn't think that would be a career changing gig, but we were just playing some like little bars with Steve Green, and that led to Grover. Same thing with all my big pop credits. It all started from things like that, you know?
Somebody went to a club or whatever, and it's like,
Yeah.
wow.
Or I did somebody's demos for very little money and did a good job, not knowing that the person, who mixed it asked who was playing drums or programmed the drums or whatever, things like that. So, you know,
But that says something about how you were listening to the music that you were performing, that you had a sensibility that if you didn't know the song, it's like, okay, this sounds like this is in this lane.
yeah,
And no, you don't have, no, you don't, you could do this lick there, but
yeah,
something's telling you, no,
yeah.
d- don't, don't, don't do that.
And that goes back to when I was saying being a kid playing different genres of music and just trying to recreate what I was hearing on the radio. And I was listening to everything. And
There you
so,
go. There you
yeah,
go. And yeah, okay, you may have heard some fills maybe more then, but still there was this lane and so if you're playing cover songs or you're getting the vibe of the song, it's like, okay, stay true to that
yeah,
because that's when that person who you don't know,
mm, yeah,
that that could be easily the time that They just happened to walk in, and
Yeah.
then they said, "Oh, who's that?"
Yeah. You're serving the music. Yeah.
Serving the music.
Yeah.
So you're on your journey.
Mhm.
So how different was it from working with Aretha
Mm.
and Alicia, Miss Keys,
Mhm.
and Beyonce, and anybody else you want to?
Yeah.
I mean, Wolf,
Yeah.
brother, you got. Excuse me, I'm going to say you got a fucking gumbo of groove
Oh,
that you've played.
yeah. Well, I'll keep it real with Aretha. I never met her. It was that came through my association with Alicia Keys and her engineer and studio partner, and co-producer often, and Mincelli. And they opened a studio in Manhattan called Jungle City. And because I program and play drums, and I kind of have equal footing in both worlds, um, that led to 2 gigs through Alicia's people, 'cause, 2 different there's a guy named Stu White, who is now a major engineer, but he came up working for Anne at Jungle City, Anne Alicia, and he's Beyonce's full-time recording, and most of her mixes are him. And he when he first started working with Beyonce, they were thinking about bringing a live drummer in, but a lot of people in that world were hesitant to use live drums on music that was mostly electronic. And and he was like, "This guy's good at both. Like, it's cool to bring him in." And that led to me working on a bunch of Beyonce stuff. And I'll get back to Beyonce because that was a pretty wild experience. Um, but with Aretha, I just got a call one day from Anne, and she's like, "Hey, can you come by Jungle City this afternoon?" And I just figured if it was for her, it was probably for Alicia, and if it wasn't, it was going to be somebody related to that. And I was like, "Cool, I'll be there." And I didn't know it was an Aretha session. But I get there and Babyface and his engineer are there, and it was Aretha was doing a covers record, and I think it was her second to last album, and they had cut a track with an orchestra that was not meant to have drum set on it, and it had crazy tempo changes and holds, and it's the kind of thing where you would need to play with the conductor to nail all the stops and starts. And, there were a few bars where the tempo would
Oh,
fluctuate, no exaggeration, like 20 beats per minute in one bar to go from one section to another. And they told me it's Clive Davis really wanted live drums. We don't think it needs live drums, but, you know, you were recommended by the studio. So, and they mapped out a click track. The engineer put it in by hand, and Babyface was like, "All right, listen to it, chart it out. I'm gonna go have dinner. I'll come back and we'll discuss where it's at." And I did, I don't know how many takes while he was gone for a couple hours, and it was like a Twilight Zone thing because the engineer was like, you're not locked to the click." And in my headphone mix, it was almost all click. I just had Aretha's vocals, which was wild hearing her vocals, and the rest of the stuff, but mostly click and my chart. And this is a long song, like it's a long ballad. And after, I don't know, like the 10th take, I started to doubt myself. I was like, am I losing my mind? Because I know I'm nailing the click. And then it occurred to me a lot of recording engineers don't listen to the playback with the click. And I was like, can I come into the control room and I just want to hear my drums in the click and nothing else? And the engineer started laughing. We both started laughing because he realized that I was actually nailing the click, but the click was off with the track. So, and around that point, Babyface comes back in. We told him what's going on, and he was like, "I'm really sorry about this. You know the song by heart now. We're gonna kill the click. Just try and guess where the holes are. Just try and guess where you
mhm.
come back in. And if we get like 3 more takes, we'll just anything that needs to be moved, it's in Pro Tools, so we'll move it." And so that was my Aretha experience. And it wasn't like going in and recording on Rocksteady or anything, but it was still, it was just an honor to work on one of her last records. And then Beyonce was also, didn't meet her. Like, I think I've seen her at industry events, but she wasn't at any of these sessions. It was just this producer, Boots, Stu, the engineer, and the assistants, and me. And I don't know if you've ever talked to anybody that's toured with Beyonce, but I'll just put it out there, she is notoriously cheap with her musicians, like really unbelievably cheap. And I won't say the numbers, but like, you can't believe how little she pays, especially at her stature. So, um, so with the recording, I remember, Stu, the engineer, told me, he said, "I already got label approval. They'll pay your rate." And I didn't think it was going to be an issue because this is Beyonce. And at the time, I'd already had a track record of playing on a lot of hit records. So I didn't think it would be a problem to get paid. Trying to get paid from them was like pulling teeth.
Oh,
And even that, they kind of made me, it was like dealing with Donald Trump. It was like they knew that if, like, I had to settle for less than my rate, because it was like either that or just take them. I'm not going to take Beyonce to court. So, but yeah, that being said, I don't know if you can see behind me, I have some plaques, but there's a big Beyonce plaque on the wall. And just the credit on a multi-platinum record with Beyonce's name on it, that is worth more than what I got paid for the sessions. So it's like, that's where the politics matter, where it's, you just got to take the hit. And the thing is, my friend Stu told me going into it, he said, "I just got to let you know, like," he's like, "She's great as an artist, but the whole organization's kind of on the cheap side. So you gotta just be willing to deal with that." So yeah. And the thing is, yeah, I hope I'm not like outing anybody, but yeah, she was like, they did pay me, I will say, and they gave me the credit, because there's some records you do where they quote unquote forget to give you the credit. But no, they gave me the credit, and just that one credit has gone a long way for me. And but yeah, you never know what it's going to be like. And now Alicia, on the other hand, she is very hands-on. I've never done a session where she's not there, or at least is like phoning in to hear something and then giving me notes. And she is always like very kind and very communicative. She knows
they
what she
take
wants.
care
She
of
knows
them.
what she
She
doesn't
takes
want.
care of them.
And they're very generous. And, they've flown me around to different sessions in different parts of the country. And I have nothing but great things to say about Alicia. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So Alicia has been nothing but great. And at this point, I've worked on, I don't know how many records with her over the years, but she's great. And then there's other artists like a Miley Cyrus, for example. Never met her, but everything was cool with the label, getting paid. And I'd say a lot of the bigger artists I've done records with, they haven't been. It's Alicia's an exception where she's a big star, but she's also like co-producing her records and she wants to be there. It's not like back in the day where everybody recorded live. Most records are pieced together now, so it's exceptional that Alicia is still there for every aspect of her record being made.
Hands on.
Yeah.
That's beautiful, man. What a wonderful beginning to this conversation with Stephen Wolf. In part 2, we'll continue exploring not only the evolution of an extraordinary musician, but also the experiences, perspectives, and life lessons that have shaped the man behind the music. Thank you for spending this time with us. I'm Gerry Brown, and until next time, remember, groove, don't lie.